What is going on, everybody? This is your boy Dingleberry here on YouTube, and I am giving you my review of the 2000 WWF King of the Ring. King of the Ring is coming back this year. It's right around the corner. It premieres tomorrow on USA on Raw and follows with SmackDown Live on Tuesday. And I figured it was only appropriate that I start covering this. Now, my review is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to because I am going to be reviewing this based on a number of criteria. First of all, I'll only be covering the tournament itself. I watched the entire event, but I will only be covering the King of the Ring tournament. Even if it's not a one-night tournament, even if it's just semifinals and final in the same show, I'll only be covering the tournament itself. There's a reason for that. Typically, when I watch the King of the Ring, I don't watch it for the undercard, I watch it for the King of the Ring tournament itself. That said, in this particular King of the Ring's case, I will be looking at the WWF title match briefly because it does set up the eventual winner's title change. I'll get to that in a minute. My criteria for reviewing the King of the Ring tournaments are as follows. I look at the quality of the bracket or the tournament itself, the match length of each match, and whether it be quarter and semi and final or just semi and final, I look at the match quality, the match length, the winner of the King of the Ring tournament itself, and the path of the winner. And each match itself gets a 4-star rating, or a rating out of 4 stars rather, and the tournament itself will get a rating out of 4 stars. Now, with that said, a lot of people might be asking why I'm choosing to review 2000s first, and that's really simple. This is the King of the Ring that I feel is the most relevant for this, due to the fact that the winner of this King of the Ring tournament did the most with winning King of the Ring. A lot of people that have won King of the Ring had either A, already been established as a main event player in the company, or B, had gotten a push in the mid-card, but it was later than they expected, or they didn't really do anything with it all in the case of the 1995 King of the Ring. We're going to get to that next year, thank God. Now, let's talk about the bracket breakdown. For this King of the Ring tournament itself, this was a one-night tournament. We had in the quarterfinals, we had Rikishi taking on Chris Benoit, Val Venus taking on Eddie Guerrero, and this is the match that I feel should have changed. I'm not saying that I have anything against either of these two superstars necessarily, but my big issue is the fact that they're in this tournament in general. There were other people on the roster at the time that I felt could have been in this position, and it was given to these two instead, and I get why they gave it to these guys in a sense, at least one of them, but the problem is that they're not going to be able to do anything with something like King of the Ring regardless of their placement. But the next match in the quarterfinals was Crash versus Bull Buchanan, and then of course the fourth match in the quarterfinal round was Kurt Angle versus Chris Jericho. This was a fantastic matchup. I have here that this was a very solid bracket. The only nitpick that I have, and this is really just a nitpick, is that Crash and Bull Buchanan were in the tournament. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about Crash, but my big issue with him being here is that he was never taken seriously as a one-on-one superstar. He could never be taken seriously. He was always 24/7 rule, which is fine. That was what he was good at. And later on in this night, after he would be eliminated in the semifinal round by Kurt Angle, he'd go right back to being hardcore champion and defending another 27 rule, so it really didn't make much difference. But the sad part about this whole thing is that those two spots took up spots for people that deserve to be there better, in my opinion. And neither one of the matches that Crash ran, in my opinion, are very good either. Now, let's talk about the matches themselves. Match number 1, which was the opening match tonight, it also happened to be the first round match in the King of the Ring tournament. King of the Ring 2000 emanated from the Fleet Center in Boston, Massachusetts, live on pay-per-view on Sunday, June the 25th, 2000. The opening match that night was a quarterfinal round match in the King of the Ring tournament. The new Intercontinental Champion Rikishi wrestling the man that he beat for the Intercontinental Championship 3 days previously on the June 22nd edition of SmackDown that year, Chris Benoit. I gave this match 1.5 stars, and the reason for it is I love Chris Benoit as a competitor. When he was alive and he was competing in the ring, he was always one of my favorite technical wrestlers to watch. I loved watching him compete. I thought he was great. The thing I hate about this match the most is that it ends with a DQ finish, and it ends early. I don't necessarily mind it ending early because you're going to wrestle 3 matches in one night, so you're going to have to end some matches early. That's not really my issue. The reason why this got such a low rating was the fact that it ended by DQ. I would have been fine with this had it been later in the night and not the first match of the tournament. I feel like that hurt this tournament in the long run because the first match was a technicality win, and it doesn't really give Rikishi the momentum he needed moving forward. And granted, his next match he would win by pinfall, but I think at that point it had already hurt him because his first win was a technicality. He didn't beat Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit beat himself. And honestly, Chris Benoit after the match beats Rikishi down. He has enough. He hits him with the chair. Referee calls for the bell, and Chris Benoit goes absolutely bat crazy, ripping and tearing at the shoulder that was injured, crossface, headbutt to the shoulder, everything. And the action after the match was pretty great. But since I'm only grading the match, it only got 1.5 stars due to the DQ finish. The next match was match number 2 of the night. It was also the second match in the first round of the King of the Ring tournament. Eddie Guerrero, the European champion, versus Val Venus, who was managed by Trish Stratus at the time in a, quote, business relationship, whatever that means. And it was a very good wrestling match, and I gave it 2.5 stars. This was a very good match, and it was a solid finish. Both men competed. Very tough. It was a hard-hitting matchup, and I have respect for both these athletes. I think it was a great match, and ultimately Val Venus would end up winning and advancing in the tournament. Match number 3, we have Crash versus Bull Buchanan. I don't really have much to say about this match. Bull Buchanan dominated the entire match. Crash got a lucky roll-up and a victory. I gave it 1 star. Not much to say. Match number 4, Kurt Angle versus Chris Jericho. This was the last quarterfinal match of the night, and I will be honest with you, it is the best match of the night. Not only of this tournament, but it was the best match on this entire show. It was back and forth, and even right from the beginning, both men come out and cut a promo during their entrance, which was great. Seeing both these guys cut this promo was fantastic, hearing what they had to say. Chris Jericho comes out after Kurt Angle's in the ring, and he's cutting his promo, and right before he gets in the ring, he calls Kurt Angle jerky, whatever that means. And I swear to you, I replayed that like 3 times, and I laughed out loud each time. It was just so funny. And I love Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle's a great wrestler. I love Chris Jericho. He's a great wrestler too. And seeing these two compete in this match together was dang awesome. I gave it 3 stars out of 4. The only reason I didn't give it 3.5, which is what I was going to give it, was because of Stephanie McMahon's interference, which led to the finish of the match. To me, that interference hurt this match and the tournament overall. I'm not a fan. But all in all, this match was a very good wrestling match. It was back and forth. I wasn't bored. I was not disappointed at all in anything that I saw. Very good wrestling match. We have a few backstage segments, and then the 4 corners match for the WWF Tag Team titles, I believe. And then we move on to the semifinal round, starting with Rikishi and Val Venus. And I gave this match 2.5 stars as well. And there's a reason for that. I alluded to the first match earlier on in the night where the shoulder was targeted by Chris Benoit earlier on in the night, and that continued with Val Venus. Val Venus really wore at the shoulder, ripped and tore at it the entire match. And Rikishi did manage to pull off the victory, but the entire match, Val Venus was working that shoulder. And Rikishi's a right-handed competitor, so it was his right shoulder that was damaged. And I thought that it was really good that Val Venus would keep attacking that shoulder. It really showed his in-ring psychology very nicely. He knew what he was doing in there, and he wasn't wasting any time getting it done. And Rikishi ended up getting the victory over Val Venus, but he didn't have the last laugh. Val Venus, after the match, would take the steel steps, hit Rikishi directly in the shoulder, hit him in the shoulder with the chair. Rikishi would put his arm on the steel steps, and Val Venus would proceed to hit his arm with the chair on the steps. Massive thud rang out through the arena in the Fleet Center. It was great. And even though that took place after the match was over, Val Venus has great in-ring psychology, at least at this event. His in-ring psychology was amazing, just seeing that in that match alone, so it got 2.5 stars. It was a decent wrestling match. Then we have Kurt Angle versus Crash. Again, not much I can say about this match. It was a little bit better than his match with Bull Buchanan, but that's not saying much. And the only reason I gave it 1.5 stars, and the only reason why is because he was wrestling Kurt Angle, and Kurt Angle, I've not really seen him have a bad wrestling match with anybody. At least in my opinion. Kurt Angle's a good wrestler. He can get a good match out of pretty much anybody, and this was no exception. It didn't go as long as I would have liked, but, for what it was, you can't really expect much out of it. It was a second-round match in the King of the Ring tournament, so you weren't going to get much out of it. 1.5 stars there, not much else to say. And then we have the King of the Ring final, and it was set up Kurt Angle versus Rikishi. And to be honest, of all the people that advanced in this tournament, I would have preferred it be Kurt Angle and Rikishi. Rikishi was the Intercontinental Champion, so he had the momentum to build. He needed the momentum. Kurt Angle just came into the company in January that year, and he needed the momentum moving forward, and him going to the final of this King of the Ring really helped, especially with it being a one-night tournament. I gave this match 2.5 stars, and Kurt gets a huge pop. and just coming out, there's a section of fans in the front row that they're arranged, and they have white t-shirts on, and they have KURT on their shirts, and they're sitting to where you can read it left to right. And every time Kurt Angle's music hit, they'd stand up, and you'd see Kurt on their shirts. There's signs everywhere. Kurt Angle has the crown on. Somebody hand drew a picture with Kurt Angle with the crown on. It said, "It's true, it's true, King Kurt." There was just signs everywhere saying that Kurt Angle would be the king of the ring. It was great. It was a great night. Kurt Angle got huge pops all night long. And Rikishi, being the Intercontinental Champion and competing with an injured shoulder, by this point in the night, he had had his shoulder heavily taped up, and he didn't have much use out of his right arm the entire match due to the previous injury. But all in all, he put up a great effort. It was a great match. The match ends in a fantastic way. It was back and forth. Kurt Angle really did everything he could. He even hit the angle slam at one point, which was amazing. Got a huge pop for that. Rikishi goes up to the top, and as soon as that happened, you knew something was up. Kurt Angle goes up to the top rope. First time Rikishi pushes him down, Kurt Angle gets back up there. Belly-to-belly suplex off the top rope. Rikishi rolls. Kurt Angle rolls into gets a 3 count. The crowd goes ballistic. Huge pop for Kurt Angle. It was great. Kurt Angle's crowned the 2000 WWF King of the Ring. Amazing finish to an amazing match. I gave it 2.5 stars. And I think that Kurt winning this King of the Ring made the most sense. He had the most momentum going in, and he really needed the victory, especially with what would happen in the 2 months prior, the 2 months coming up. The Rock would go on to, of course, win the 6-man tag match later that night, become the WWF champion, and would defend the championship in a triple threat match against both Kurt Angle and Triple H at SummerSlam that Kurt Angle would eventually go on to win. And I think that Kurt Angle's King of the Ring win really set this up, and honest to God, this really launched Kurt Angle's career. If it wasn't for this King of the Ring, I don't think Kurt Angle would have been the star that he was, which is a shame given his wrestling skill. But this was a very good King of the Ring. I was very impressed. I was very pleased. I really enjoyed this King of the Ring. And my final thoughts, I love one-night tournaments for King of the Ring. I think it means more if it's a one-night tournament. So seeing the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals in one night means a lot more to me, because it means that the winner has to compete 3 times at least in order to win King of the Ring. So to me, that means a lot. Alright guys, that was my review of the 2000 WWF King of the Ring. Overall, it got 14 out of 28 stars. So it only missed 7 stars from being a perfect tournament. So all in all, it was not a bad night. It was not a bad tournament at all. I'll be watching 2001's King of the Ring starting tonight, and I hope to have that video uploaded for you tomorrow. And on Tuesday, I will be uploading my thoughts about the first round of this year's King of the Ring tournament, and later this week you can look out for 2002's King of the Ring review by me. I thank you guys so much for watching this. I love all of you. Deuces.